Hello, and welcome again to another episode of 5 Plain Questions, a podcast that proposes 5 questions to Indigenous artists, creators, musicians, writers, movers and shakers, and culture bearers, people in the community that are doing great things for their communities. I'm Joe Williams, your host for this conversation. My goal is to showcase these amazing people in our Indigenous communities from around the region and country. In this episode, we are returning to a conversation with Jeremy Redigal, a Waters recipient and a former guest of the podcast. So we are coming back with 5 more questions for Jeremy Redigal. Jeremy Redigal is an enrolled member of the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate. He lives in the Enemy Swim district of the Lake Traverse Reservation. He also descends from the Dakota, Assiniboine people of Fort Belknap, Montana. His work for over the last 15 years has been working towards learning and to passing on the Dakota language and culture. Jeremy has been working with Native American youth for the past 16 years, encouraging language revitalization, traditional bow making and games, stories, and traditional art. He believes in a holistic approach to working with our youth. His primary focus today is revitalizing Plains-style bow and arrow accompanied with horseback archery. So, let's jump back in with 5 more questions with Jeremy Redigal. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming back to the podcast and sitting down with me. It's been like we had talked about right before we started recording. It's been a few minutes. So thank you. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
For our new listeners, would you be able to introduce yourself? Tell us a little about yourself, your background, and what it is that you do.
Oh. How me takiapi Jeremy Redigal makiapi Dakota matuzi demie Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate he mataha homakshina he han Montana hechi chachma ija kushi chi etaha Fort Belknap etaha. So yeah, my relatives, my name is Jeremy Redigal. From the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate. The Enemy Swim district is where I'm from and where I live, but I originally grew up in Montana. And we're also descend from the Dakota or Assiniboine people of Fort Belknap.
For those who didn't catch the first episode, we talked a bit about your journey from your youth and your, I don't want to say discovery. My dad corrected me on that one time because we were talking about when he was young and how he was brought back into the traditional ways again. And so it's not something that he was never unaware of. And I assume it's the same with you too, growing up where we've grown up. But would you be able to share your journey from being a youth, maybe some of the struggles that you had gone through and how you rediscovered your Dakota roots? It's a very inspiring story, and I'd like to be able to catch our visitors or listeners up with that.
Yeah, definitely. And that it's a good point because when people use those kind of like it makes you think like rediscovery or reconnecting or whatever that may be. Because in some instances, it almost makes it sound like there was like this, like there's definitely a separation, I think, for all of our people to some degree or other because of colonization, because of things that have happened, right? But yes, I've always, since I was a little kid, been aware and sought out to know my identity and who I am. And of course, that's in my situation, which I know is not unique, that there's other people in similar situations where it can be a lot of work to do that. So like I said, being enrolled over here in Sisseton, my grandfather was originally from here and then ended up in Montana. So I had no real connection to this place my entire childhood, never had even been out here, right? But the majority of my family is all enrolled here. And we do have, like I said, from Fort Belknap and then also Fort Peck, we have blood from both of those on the other side of our family. But I actually grew up on the Northern Cheyenne off and on throughout my childhood. And then my parents divorced and my mom moved to Helena, the capital of Montana. And my dad still remained down on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. He still lives there to this day. So growing up, I had always been and immersed myself in the culture, but specific to being Dakota, there was a disconnect there. Because aside from my immediate family and my grandpa and them, like I didn't grow up around other Dakota people. I was exposed to a lot of Lakota people, and I had went to ceremonies and in Napi off and on when I was young. But I primarily grew up around all the other tribes that were in Montana, Cheyennes specifically, and then I had an adopted mom. She passed away 2 years ago. Today is actually her birthday, but she was Blackfeet, and so when I lived in the urban setting with my mom, my adopted mom really kept me connected to traditional and cultural ways because she practiced and lived that way. My dad, he himself, I wouldn't consider to be somebody who practices our traditional ways, but the family he came from, it was something that even though we were mostly Dakota, we grew up more connected to our Nakota, our Assiniboine ways. So growing up, all of our funerals, everything, it was always done traditionally on the Nakota or Assiniboine side of things. But I always identified as Dakota, not just because of being enrolled here, but because of my grandpa, and that's what he would, tell us and say. So I always identified that way. But like I said, there was a disconnect there. So I learned by researching things and reading, and anytime that I had a chance, I would go around and be seek out Dakota people. But it wasn't until but at the same time, I come from so much that everybody else does when it comes to our the dysfunction and a lot of those things growing up. And so I had a lot to figure out about myself as an individual, as a person, and then also as a Dakota person. And so it took me until I was about 29, 30 years old when I officially was like, got sober and really straightened my life out. Prior to that, I would always believed and be a part of our cultural ways, but then I also had a lot of struggles, right? And so it took a while, but by that time when I got sober and really wanted to change my life, it was time for me to 100% invest in reconnecting with who I was and how I wanted to raise my children, really like to have that identity so that they didn't struggle with a lot of the things that I had struggled with. And so a big part of that obviously was coming back home, was reconnecting here in Sisseton. And so I started that by just came out for the powwow one year. Then totally by chance, I won't get into it because it's too big long of a story, but ended up at the Wiwangwachi out here. And, so for 4 years, my family and I, about 5 years actually, we would come back, every summer. And then finally, both my wife and I had been laid off of our jobs and back in Montana, and I had always had a dream of learning my language. And so we made the decision to just up and move out here, and we did that. And it was a big risk to take. We had no site of no jobs or housing or anything like that. We just brought our teepee and saved up as much money as we could, and we came and lived out here until it all fell into place, and ended up joining the college and worked with our fluent speakers for a total of 8 years there, and eventually went over to and then that's a long story of the whole program and how it evolved and all of that. And then I ran the language institute for the tribe for about a year and a half. And so during that entire time, I just spent all of my time with the fluent speakers and the elders here, and to get to know my language. And so learning the language is a huge part of me really reconnecting with who I am as a Dakota person. The history and all of those kind of things were a big thing, but a lot of that I could learn that from afar, but the language and really being immersed in like how our elders, conduct themselves and the way their manner is and all of those kind of things. The only way to really genuinely get that is to to live it and to be a part of it. And so I've been very fortunate. It's been 11 years now. This past July 4th weekend was when we came out here. So it's been 11 years now that we've lived here and been a part of all of that.
Well, and through this, your artwork, your creative work, where was that along this journey here? Did this start back up in Montana, or as you were connecting with the Sisseton community?
Yeah, it's interesting because looking back, like sometimes we just live or do things and we don't, have any like real identity to it, I guess. But I've always used my hands. I've always liked to like do things and make things, figure things out. So I definitely, looking back at my childhood, I learned how to like make dream catchers. I learned how to peyote stitch, do things like that. And it wasn't something that I was big into, but I would do it, periodically, and more for like a therapy type thing, I think, but also because of that connection to the culture, right? And so I started with little things like that. The funny thing is that I got into selling drumsticks and earrings and little things like that. But the reason I got into that wasn't so much the artistic part of it as it was the hustle, because I traveled a lot and my own kids, plus I worked with youth a lot. And so, and the one job I had, like there was no funding to do things, we other than for my salary. So we had to be creative, do fundraisers all the time. But when we would travel places, I would sell earrings and drumsticks or hand drums to make money, really, to just, to be able to have extra, because traveling is expensive. And so that's how that kind of started. And then when I moved here, the first thing was when I signed up for the language program there. Erin Griffin was my supervisor, or my advisor at the time. She had started to receive these traditional arts grants from the American Indian College Fund. And so the very first one she put on, or at least that I attended, was the bow making, which I had always wanted to learn how to make bows. So I signed up for that class. And then from there, she would host at least one every semester, but usually there would be multiple ones. Flute making, hide tanning, parfleche, what you name it. She hosted them. And so I think I attended all but like one of the throughout the years of all of the ones that she hosted. And so that's really what, kind of took me further into it. And then I still up to that point, I didn't look at myself as an artist. Real quick, another thing that I did in Montana previous to coming out here was traditional games. And that was a big thing that got me headed down that path also, because we would craft and make. And it started out like kind of like a real basic elementary type of crafting. And then through my interest in it, the historical part of the games, I would started to like pay attention to like museums and different like how they did things. And so of course our people were really intricate in, the work that they put into making things. And so I just slowly started to that's probably what initially got me into this path, and then coming to the college and being a part of all of those workshops. So then she talked me, she got us, me and my wife, I believe there was another student, but she asked us if we wanted to be a part of the Northern Plains Art Market in Sioux Falls. And so we had agreed, and it was funny because I had made this dance bandolier, and I was in Fort Belknap at the time, and they were doing the art show. They had to submit the pieces, and then there was going to be the reception that following night. And my wife and her were going to submit them, and then I would be back in time for the reception part. And I was messaging my wife. I was like, don't even submit it. I was like too self-conscious, thinking like, it's not even worth putting into an art show, And then they were like, no, we're doing it anyway. And so they went and they submitted it. And then that night we show up to the reception, and here I had won first place both in my category and then also as best of show for traditional. And that just blew me away. I didn't understand why or how, that could be. And I always tell people I suffer from what's that word? Imposter syndrome. Like I don't view myself as an artist, right? And so that was kind of like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then they kept bugging me, encouraging me to apply for the Minnesota Historical Society's Native American Artists in Residence program that they had. And so I had applied the 1 year, and I didn't get it, but I did receive a encouragement grant. And so the individual that he doesn't select the people, but he overseen the program, and he reached out to me and he told me, you were a very strong candidate. It came down to you and the person that had received it. It came down to you too. So he goes, you really need to apply for it when it comes up again. And I didn't apply for it the next time. And again, just my own self-conscious stuff. And so then the third time it come up, he messaged me again. And he's like, I'm telling you that you need to apply for it. And it was a significant amount of money. It's like almost 30,000 when it's all said and done. So I did. I applied for it again, and I ended up receiving it. And I still struggled with the concept, man. I'm not an artist, I'm just somebody who likes to do things, to make things, and especially, being culturally relevant things, more like a responsibility, I guess, is the way I kind of looked at it. Like it's my duty to do these things and to learn them and to pass them on. So that's where it started. And then through the years, it just kind of grew. People would ask me to come in and teach this or do that or, share things. And then, of course, it's, we struggle in this world to provide financially, no matter how hard you work or how many jobs you have. So then why not do these things and make a little extra money on the side to help my family, So then when my wife wanted to go to IA. She didn't know that she had this gift of writing. It was like a therapeutic thing for her. And then when people started to see and read her writings, they were like blown away. Like she has a gift, right? A real natural gift. So she was encouraged by one of the faculty at Sisseton Wahpeton College. She needed to pursue writing, and because she was pursuing something different at the time. And so she had this dream of going to the Institute of American Indian Arts. And then COVID happened and all these other things that kind of delayed it a little bit, but we've eventually were able to do it. And so we spent 3 years down there. And while we were there, I was burnt out on everything, all the language work, everything that I'd been doing through the years. I was just totally burnt out. And so the first semester, I had no intention of going to school whatsoever. I was like, I'm just going to chill. I continued to teach language like on Zoom because it was, right after COVID and all that. But I started to, after that first semester, I was looking around. I was like, man, they offer a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of cool classes you could take. So I had always been interested in like silversmithing and that kind of stuff, and never with an intention to like become a silversmith. I just wanted to learn some real basic things that I could incorporate into the work that I did. And I took the class as a non-degree seeking, and I just actually the first half of the semester I got frustrated with it. I was about ready to quit. And there was a girl that worked that was a studio monitor there that was from one of the local pueblos there, who was like a third generation silversmith. And so she started to give me like some one-on-one stuff in the evenings when I would go in there and work on my projects. And that just helped me so much that I ended up falling in love with doing silversmithing. And so for the next 2.5 years, that's what I did. And eventually I went from just taking that class to the second class and the third class to where I finally was like, I need to just be a full-time student and really learn all these other art forms that they teach there. And so I did that. I did not graduate because I had started later than my wife, and the goal was for her to complete hers. I was content with just going down there and learning stuff. And hopefully one day I'll be able to go back and finish. But as of right now, I'm content with the things that I learned. And so, yeah, it opened up the door, not just for the silversmithing, but also being able to go in and learn how do they, you do critiques or just real basic art stuff. I never went to high school, so I never even had a basic art class before. So I didn't even know anything about two-dimensional, whatever, sculpting, all of that kind of stuff. So I got a lot out of attending school down there, and it really added to the stuff that I was already doing.
Well, I've been watching probably the last 4 years now. Your work has been in a lot of group shows, a lot of group exhibitions, and it's just exciting to see this new direction that I see you going. Because I feel like I get to know you in one aspect, and all of a sudden you're doing something that's in a different way, and that's great. This growth is something that is pretty inspiring. Um, so the next question I was going to ask you, well, first off, congratulations on the 2024 Midwest Culture Bears Award. um, I think the article that I was reading was focused on your bow making and what you're doing now, but of course you're much more than a bow maker. And so I wanted to ask you how you do, and you've talked a little bit about this, but how do you see art as far as language and traditional practices working together to I guess help not just your own craft but community as well?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to answer this, I guess. But one is that to me, there's no separation of these things. The language, the history, the stories, the ceremonies, all of those things is like when I study the language, like I can't find a word for art. Yes, we can create a word for that because of modern times, and we do those things a lot today. But traditionally looking at it, like there's not a word for art. There's definitely ways to describe different art forms and different things that people created and did. So to me, that tells me that it was so a part of who we were as a people. It was just everybody did this to some degree or other. There were definitely people that were gifted with the ability to do quill work or whatever it may be, bow makers. Not every man probably had a general idea of how to make a bow or an arrow, or at least how to maintain or fix up and keep his stuff usable and ready, right? But there were select individuals that were gifted at bow making or arrow making or whatever it may be. And so yeah, that's a big part of it, is just knowing that this is a part of who we are. And our people were so skilled with the art forms that, because just like everything else, colonization, all these things happen, a lot of those things start to fall by the wayside, or how the techniques maybe of how they were done change through time because we lose access to certain things or whatever it is. So it's researching those things or finding those elders that still do carry some of the original teachings with some of that stuff. The language connected to those things, that's a huge, specifically, I'll use bows and arrows as an example. I could take a bow and arrow with any fluent speaker and ask them to talk about it in Dakota, and they'll be able to. But there are old words that a lot of times are no longer used because the elders themselves maybe didn't grow up using bow and arrows. So they're using the language to the best of their ability to describe what they're seeing. But there are those old words that they use that a lot of times fall out of use. So then we do the work to like research these things and look them up or whatever, however, maybe, or like I said, a certain specific elder may remember those specific words, whereas the rest of them maybe don't. So it really just helps you to dive in deeper into the language and the culture with it, the stories of where these things come from, how we acquired them, or our perspective, our viewpoint, what they were used for. But then, like, as far as like community, for me is the young people. Today everybody has a screen in front of their face, or even in our education, even in our tribal schools, right? Like, we have been indoctrinated into a certain way of learning. And a lot of it is being told what to think and how to think. Whereas we know in our Dakota way, it's the opposite. We challenge them to think and to figure, problem solve, right? Teamwork, all of these things. And so if we can teach our young people how to use their hands and how to make things, how to do stuff, right? Because then you are carrying on those traditions. You're helping them emotionally and spiritually, because so many of our young people come from, whether they come from good homes or bad homes, we still are living in a lot of marginalized communities where we struggle with things no matter what. And so you're teaching them how to express themselves. You're teaching them how to fill their time with something positive. And at the same time, maybe they can provide for themselves, or they can, acquire other things through trade or selling the things that they've learned how to make. But yeah, there's, stories and history connected to all of these things. So there's, like I said, there's no separation of it. It's all connected and it's all relevant.
As you're describing some of these things, I think back to my growing up years, and I remember in the late 80s, we had a community from Canada come down to our Wichipi that year. And they came in and we met with them. And I remember my dad being excited because he commented that the way they spoke in the old way, and they were using terms that he had not heard since he was a kid. And so I imagine some of that research that you do also means connecting with other communities to see if maybe there's knowledge there, words, phrases, concepts that may not be available in the community that you're in.
Yeah.
Vice versa.
Yeah, I'll share something really interesting, man. And I got to be careful how I say this because I don't want to offend people. But I asked your dad, I said, I want to, I make all this stuff. I sell things. I kind of trying to do something for myself here. I said, I want to be, and I'm an advocate for the language. I said, so it's important for me to be able to have, to use the language. And I said, so I'm looking for a name of what to call the stuff that I'm doing, right? And I said, and I've seen other fellow Dakota people that I know that do that, and they have a name for their little business or their little, art stuff that they do. And I said, so I don't want to copy what they're doing. I said, so what is a name that you could think of that would describe and, whatnot? He sat there for a minute and it didn't take him very long. He sat there for a minute and he said, Yupia Ajutumpi. He said, that's what I would say. And Ishina Spencer Wana was sitting next to him and he agreed. He said, yeah, that's good. And so here, I had to actually go in and and I had heard him use this word ajutumpi before, right? And so I had to kind of research it. And when I say research, I mean go into the old dictionaries, look at because if they're words that you're just not in everyday usage. And and I was able to to break it down and to understand it. Aju is something that is extra or attached to something. So this could be used for beadwork, it could be used for different things like that. And so it made sense to me after I had thought about it and kind of researched it a little bit. It made sense. And so, and then plus, of course, I trusted your dad. And so that's the name that I still use. I got T-shirts made. I got stickers. I had a logo and all of this. And so, and the best description of what that word means is they're wearing their finest, So it's talking about the jewelry or the beadwork, the adornment, right? And so is crazy. I had, they were all Lakota speakers, and we all know that Lakota is really strong. They still are really strong in their language today, right? And I had one from our community who was married out here, and then another lady from Cheyenne River that I know, both of them fluent speakers, and they both messaged me and asked me, what does that mean? Because I shared it on social media or whatever. And so I explained it to them the best I could. And all they simply said was, oh, okay, I don't know that word. So they didn't understand it. Then I had a third person. This organization I was working for had bought a bunch of my stuff, my sweatshirts and T-shirts, and they gifted it out to different people. And so I had this other elder lady who was a fluent speaker, messaged me and asked me about it. And so I explained it to her the best I could. And we hear these horror stories of like sometimes we have elders that are really, really kind of vicious. And this was my first time of really, truly experiencing that. And she was not pleasant to me. And in the end, I explained to her where the name came from. I told her your dad was the one who gave it, all of this stuff. And she was like, I don't care. That is not a word. And she just like went off on me. And so then she's like, I'm calling out to Pine Ridge and I'm going to ask these different elders about this word. And I said, please do. I said, because you are not the first person to say this to me. And I started to second guess, like, is this incorrect? But I'm like, I know it has to be. So then she messages me back a while later and she was very apologetic. And she had called some elder out in Pine Ridge and they were like, yes, that's a word. And they said, ajutua is how we describe having an elk tooth dress or something that has adornment put on it, So she was very apologetic about the way that, she talked to me about it. But that is an example of how words can fall out of use or change, or how one community will continue to use it in another community. Languages evolve and change, So it just really reinstilled in me, the faith and the trust that I had in your dad. And your dad, now that I go back and I listen to other recordings of him with other stuff, he, in my opinion, had an older way of speaking than a lot of the elders that I learned from here in Sisseton. He really did. He had kind of an older way of describing and talking about things.
Well, thank you for that. And as this conversation is going, you've really answered the next question, which is the role of elders and community histories play in shaping your work and your teachings. But being a father now, I imagine that, and working with youth, I imagine that they influence you maybe in a way that you didn't expect. Can you share maybe that experience working with youth and maybe what you've learned from them?
Yeah, real quick, I want to go back to the question you were going to ask about the elders.
Please, yes.
That is a tricky thing because there are things that our elders don't know today that because of boarding schools and reservation era, right? So there are things that are not common knowledge anymore. And I've had that happen where another one of our elders, I do games, right? I research old games, and I don't know if he was joking or just being ornery, but he accused me of making it up one time, one of the games that I was sharing with these elders, because none of them had any knowledge of it. But then a prime example after that situation happened, that it's a game that there's deer toes that they put together on a string with an awl, and you try to catch it, right? And we were down in Lower Brule, and my wife, there was a Kushi, brush breaker. I can't think of her first name. She was like 98 years old. Anyway, my wife went up and showed her that game, and she got so excited. She goes, my unchi used to have one of these, and she grabbed it and started to play it. So the point being with me bringing this up is that we can't get discouraged, even if our elders or somebody in our community don't know some of these things. We still put in the work to try to revive and bring these things back, but we have to be careful how we do it. We have to be really careful with that, especially with our elders. You don't go in there trying to act like things, right? If they don't understand or know something, you just accept it. And then hopefully at some point in time, somebody else is going to know it and be able to help you or give you some more information on it. The youth, working with youth, for me, that's what my primary work has been for the last 16 years or so. And one thing, I always share this, because to me, working with youth has been more of a like spiritual thing, or something that is like, I don't know what it is. I don't know. My main reason for getting into working with youth was I'm tired of seeing the revolving door, whether it's incarceration, diabetes, cancers, the diseases, sicknesses, the high school drop, whatever it is. I was a statistic. I know all about it. I got tired of seeing that. We need to have prevention. We need to instill the language and the culture and the pride into our young people so that hopefully they don't go down this wrong road. I believe that our ancestors left a blueprint for us so that if we can tap into those things, that we have protocols, or we have like some people may call them superstitions, but we have protocols, we have certain way that our people live. And there is not just a spiritual, but there's also most often a psychological reason why we did or didn't do certain things. And I believe by reconnecting with those teachings that it can help us to improve our own quality of life. I really do believe that, because we've been indoctrinated into a foreign way of living, right? And but when I started to work with youth, I had a mentor from Northern Cheyenne, and he told me, he says, this was really profound to me at this point in time in my life. He said, whatever you do, he said, don't you ever think that you're going to change these youth, or you're going to fix them or save them. He says, because they're going to do more for you than you will ever be able to do for them. And it is the truth. I tell people all the time, I struggle with adults. I struggle with people my own generation. I said, you look around and the most people that you're going to see me associated with is going to be youth, young people, or our elders. And then, so there's that important part of bridging those two together, right? Because there is a disconnect there, you know, getting our young people to be comfortable going to Kunshi and Unka to, you know, ask them questions or to build a relationship with them. But working with the young people, this is my belief. I'm nobody special. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not anything to tell them how to be or how to change their behaviors or whatever, man. That they already know. They know what they need to do in life. Our responsibility is to set an example, because they're watching and observing us. So setting an example and being present, being consistent. Those are the two simplest things that we can do for our young people in our community, is to be present, to be consistent with them, and to just set an example of what to do or what not to do, you know? And yeah. And so that's the work that I do with that is just, you know, I love it when I can share something with a young person and give them offer them a different perspective or something, and they take it and they run with it. You know, that is the most fulfilling thing, and that is how we pass these things on, as we share. We don't, you know, it's a hard thing when we talk about the word gatekeeping today, because I think it gets thrown around a lot. But I do believe that when it comes to our young people, we share with them. You know, that's how that stuff lives on.
With the youth, you know, I think it's some people kind of forget what it was like being a kid, and when they try to work with kids, you know, they'll forget, you know, that kids, the youth, they're savvy, they're smart, they know when someone's not being genuine with them. You know, they can see right through someone when they're being patronizing. You know? And as soon as they lose that trust with you, it's over with them. You know, you with the individual. Like, if you lose that trust with a kid, you're kind of on the outs. You know, and they will either look to someone else, but they won't come back to you if they really lose that trust. Kids are smart. Kids are really smart. So, question I had was, how do you balance honoring our traditional ways while adapting them and making them accessible to today's youth? Because, you know, kids, I think, are very much in the present. You know, they're big on their screens. Pop culture has them, of course. What is a way that you find where you're able to connect with some of the traditional teachings with them? How are you able to break through with youth?
I think a big part of it is for one, getting them in a setting where they're not sitting there glued to their screen, to where you have their attention. And that can be difficult at times, but One is like, what is their interest? What is some way that you can get them to attract them, or to, get their focus onto something. And then I think we have to be really gentle about how, because, I'm sure you've seen this. I know, like, I can think of a couple of my older relatives, Kushi and a few others that I had growing up, that were really strict. They, especially when it came to like ceremonial or like cultural ways, where they will get after you. They will, tell you that that's not how things are done. And I think about that a lot, because people will say, oh, that's boarding school or this or that. And yeah, there's some of that, but I think some of it is that that's how our people were a long time ago. They were very strict, and we had laws and protocols that were really enforced. And today, because of the boarding schools and all of the other stuff that our people have dealt with, we've lost so much, or we ourselves, like I said, a big thing is we've been indoctrinated into a foreign educational system. And so when you're told what to do and how to think, when it comes time for you to pay attention and figure things out yourself, which is a true Dakota way of being, we're disconnected from that today, because we always think, oh, these people are going to always do this, right? And then one day they're gone. So I understand our elders that were really strict like that, but I don't think that today that it's appropriate for like myself to be that way with young people. It's not appropriate at all. I have to remind myself there were times when I didn't know things. There were times when I didn't understand things, whether I had to be told or I had to figure it out on my own or observe it and pay attention. And so with young people, I really try my hardest to just challenge the way that they think, not to tell them that the way they're thinking is wrong, but to challenge the way that they think. And, even for adults, when I teach classes at the college, it's the same way. I want to challenge you guys to think. Don't just believe what you've been told. Don't just believe what you read. Think about it, question it, process through it, you know. So yeah, so I think with our young people, it's really just that. I want them to. We live in a different time. We don't live in the 1800s. We can't be stuck in the past. But at the same time, like I said, we have a blueprint. Let's tap into those things. Let's learn it. Let's understand it to the fullest of our ability, and then go forward from there. And so, if we can raise our young people to think that way, and to question things, or to dive in deeper, to research, to learn further about a certain subject or whatever it may be. But like my lacrosse, I coached lacrosse here, both modern and traditional, for a number of years. Right now, my big thing is archery. All summer, that's what I've been doing, is archery. Specifically, horseback archery is what I'm doing with the young people at the college. The extension program at the college is the one sponsoring it, but it's for the community. So I mostly have like younger, like 10, 11, 12-year-olds that are participating in it. So I have something that they want. I have something they're interested in. Okay, how do I slowly start to integrate our values into that? The lacrosse is a prime example, where today it's accepted to be angry. It's accepted to lose your temper. It's accepted to act any old way in sports or any other area. But in our Dakota way, that's a no-no. Like we're really big on, you control your emotions, the respect factor. Ishina Orson would always say respect. He would say, if you carry yourself with respect, that is a one-way thing. It's not a two-way thing. It doesn't matter how somebody is treating you, what they're saying to you, what their behaviors are. If you respect yourself, you're not going to react to those things. So because I'll hear people say that, oh, I respect people that respect me, but it's like, no, we have to respect ourselves. And if we respect ourselves, we will carry ourselves in that way. So when I was coaching lacrosse, and our kids they dealt with a lot of racial things, whatever, the stuff that they dealt with from the other teams, players, coaches, parents, it didn't matter, referees. And I would always remind them why we're here. We're not going to react to those things. Let me, as the adult, let me deal with that stuff. You guys remain true to the purpose of you being here, and stay centered and stay focused, and don't react with your emotions, because this game is going to teach you about life. And when you go off into the real world, you're going to experience those things. You're going to experience the discrimination, the bullying, even among our own people, not just in the Washichu world. How are you going to address those things? How are you going to work through that? How are you going to problem solve? If we react to those things, then what we're doing is creating a cycle that will continue to exist in our community or in the outside world even. But if we can problem solve, if we can communicate and articulate, and we can address things in a good way, we're going to help solve some of these problems that we've been dealing with for generations now, you know? So, but I do it in a subtle way where I'm not sitting there preaching this to them. I'm demonstrating it, or when the opportunity arises, then I talk to them about it. But it has to be, at the moment when it's appropriate to talk about that stuff, to help them to comprehend it and to understand it, I guess.
Yeah. That's, I think it's something that's really needed in our community today. There's a lot of public fighting, a lot of it's social media, of course, but, it spills over into our district meetings. It spills over into the different boards that are around our communities. And, I think it's disappointing seeing how people are conducting themselves in public like this. And what you're sharing is it gives me hope, that maybe like the lack of language that a lot of us missed out on because of the trauma that our parents had gone through the boarding school system. Those lessons will be taught to the next generation so that we can sort of self-correct how it's been.
Yes. Yep. And like I said, we've been indoctrinated into this way of being, It's not because our people are messed up. It's because messed up things have happened to our people. And so then in that, there becomes all this confusion and lack of understanding of how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. We've been taught that over here, is how things are supposed to be, but yet that's foreign to us. We don't understand it, but yet we're also removed from who we were as a people and how we operated and, solved our problems and did all these things. And so how do we balance it? And then I think that too, people get stuck in this traditional world mindset or the modern progressive. And it's like, sometimes we have no choice but to merge some of those things, because there are some of these old ways that are very, very difficult because of the breakdown in our family structure. So if there's a breakdown in our family structure, there's obviously a breakdown in our community, And so how are we able to move forward with those things? How do you incorporate some of these traditional teachings if not everything is in place on a family, on a Tioshpaye, a community level? Sometimes you can't. And so we have to juggle, we have to maneuver through some of these obstacles that are in our way.
Yeah. It's the sense of the loss of teaching of values at a certain, to youth at a certain point, and they struggle after that. Yeah.
Yep.
So looking forward, what are your dreams for the next generation of young artists, cultural practitioners? What are your hopes of what's to come?
That we're going to completely dismantle the system and rebuild it. My hopes and dreams with our young people is just to really help in the process of deconstructing this system that we've been born into, whether it's growing your own food, taking care of yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, being able to provide for your family by doing a balance between what is necessary and what needs to be done and what it is that makes you happy. We have been a slave to a system, and I don't agree with it. Capitalism is literally destroying not just this country, but this world. Climate change, all these things that we're dealing with, the problem of it is your dad would always say, "Ia." The spirit of like consumption, I guess, is maybe the best way to put it, but it's never fulfilled, right? So I want our young people to be fulfilled. I want them, and the only way to do that is to be self-sustainable, where we're feeding ourselves, we're helping each other, we're leaning on each other and encouraging each other and lifting each other up, and not relying on our tribal council or our United States government or our state or our districts, that we're relying on each other as Dakota people and bringing back that, what does that true identity look like? And teaching them how to make things, teaching them how to problem solve situations, and that we can live, that we can have a balance between convenience and comfort, and also being real about the world we live in and the hard work that needs to be done sometimes to maintain that. But really getting back to that. And I think what we're experiencing right now is there's a huge push in this part where we are reclaiming who we are, our language, our ceremonies, all these things. At the same time, there's like this where it's kind of out of balance at the same time, because we're trying to figure it out. There's no, easy way to do it. And so social media and all of these other things that impact our approach, or they impact our thoughts. If you come from a family that was indoctrinated into Christianity, what's your reference point for going back to a ceremonial way of life, or whatever it may be? That sometimes that reference point isn't there, or it's blurred, or it's distorted a little bit. So we're in this generation right now where they're figuring it out. I think it started in the 70s with AIM and all of these other things that have gone on since that time, and we're still at that, going through that, but we're at this height where now we want it. This is who we are. Okay, now let's iron it out. Let's figure it out, and let's start to implement it into our everyday way of life. But when we're dealing with nothing but chaos around us within this country and this world, and our tribal councils that are caught up in that, it can be really hard to figure that out.
Jeremy, I've appreciated this conversation. The knowledge that you have, that you've shared, is invaluable, and I just want to thank you for coming back on and sharing this with us, reconnecting with myself and the audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That said, where can our listener check out your work, connect with you if need be?
Instagram is the main place that I do it. Wambadi_Duta, or you can just type in Jeremy Redigal. That's, on Facebook. But I mostly share most of my work on Instagram. I don't have a website or anything like that. I'm still pretty not to that point, and I don't even know if I want to be.
Right on. I do see posts every now and then, and I do share them because, man, your work is something else, and I want people to have easy access to what you're doing. So keep going, keep doing that, and I can't wait to see what's coming next for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And that does it for this episode of 5 Plain Questions. I want to thank Jeremy again for his time and sharing his story with us. Jeremy has dedicated so many years, not just to connecting with the culture and elders, but ensuring that this knowledge carries on to the youth in our communities. I've come to know him and deeply respect him for his integrity that he carries with him. And we are a better community because of Jeremy. I want to thank you for joining us and spending time listening to what I feel is a very important story and perspective from our community. So please, join us next time as we speak with another incredible person. I'm Joe Williams. Thank you for listening to 5 Plain Questions. Your support helps keep these conversations going. You can follow us on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky. And to stay connected, visit us at 11warriorarts.com to explore these episodes, past episodes, and to check out our exclusive merch and to sign up for our upcoming newsletter. Every listen, share, and purchase helps support this podcast. This episode was made possible by the support of the Waterers, whose dedication to community-led change and disrupting traditional philanthropy inspires us all. To learn more about their work and how you can get involved, visit their website at www.waterers.org. That's WATERERS.org. Support from this podcast also comes from Art of the Rural, working to advance culture and equity through collaboration, media, and the arts. Our episodes are produced and edited by Pod for Good. Jesse and the team work tirelessly to create high-quality episodes you're listening to right now by removing all of my ums and quirks. Well, that does it. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. This has been an 11 Warrior Arts production.